All right. Good afternoon, Krytac. Actually, it's more like good evening. Um, Today's topic is overspin, and the reason why I want to bring it up is I've seen a lot of discussion recently on our group, and people often ask, "Hey, I just bought this brand new Krytac, um, put a battery in there, and when I go to shoot semi-auto, and it's shooting 2 round or sometimes even more." So I thought I want to take this opportunity to discuss with you guys what is overspin, what's causing it, and what solution that can be applied and to minimize this can happening. Now, before I continue, I need to make a disclaimer. I am by no mean a WE major, which is electric engineer. So I'm not one of those guys, but everything I've said right now is based on what I've experienced and what I've observed, and the terminology that I use. I'm trying to keep close to what everybody what they are using. They may be some word maybe I'm using it wrong, but if I did make that mistake, just let me know. I will correct it next video. All right. What is overspin? This is a term that we use to describe a phenomenon that when we are shooting the gun in semi-auto and expecting shooting 1 round, but it ended up shooting 2 round bursts or maybe even more. Now, this is actually nothing new. This overspin have had happens ever since we start, maybe even 10, 15 years ago when you start using bigger batteries. Like I said, remember why I said bigger batteries. Now, the original gun, the original airsoft gun was designed to use only like a small battery, like an 8.4 volt battery. Nowadays, we advance all the way to using a much bigger battery, more power, you can play longer. So, but the basic design is sending a current into the motor hasn't really changed. It's still a basic setup. So when you send a whole lot more power into the motor, this is what's going to happen. There's not enough resistance for the motor to stop. Let's put it in this context, all right? So think about the motor is kind of like a water wheel, and the electric current, uh, which is the water that flows through it, and then pushing the wheel to turn. So the faster the water flows, the wheel turns faster. Um, then again, you have to consider when you turn that fast, there's a lot of momentum going through, and in order to have the wheel stop, that it's going to take some time for the wheel to stop. Apply that exactly to the current day's motor, because you sending a whole lot of power into the motor, the resistance in the motor is not enough to stop the momentum. Okay, that's exactly what's happening. How does this apply to modern days, electric guns? Um, Nowadays, we like to use a LiPo battery or lithium-ion batteries. Now, these batteries generally are a lot more powerful, hold more capacity in a smaller package. Now, there are three variables associated with these batteries. You heard before, like the voltage, the milliamp per hour, which is the capacity, and C rating, which is the discharge rate. Now, C rating, there's also a A rating, which is the continuous discharge rate. Um, I don't want to talk about that right now, but I want to just focus on the number, which is C rating, and um, the milliamp per hour. The reason why is these two numbers can give me the output, which is the amperage. And I've been observing the number that come up with the amperage can affect the way the motor spin and stop. Okay, the formula is like this: is basically the milliamp per hour times the discharge rate and divided by 1,000. For instance, if you have say a 1,000 milliamp battery and your discharge rate is only 15 C, that's C is a rating. Um, so if you calculate it, 1,000 milliamp, 15 C, it's come up with 15 amp. That is the formula that was given to me. So 15 amp sending through the motor, it's not a whole, it's not strong enough. So, well, it will spin, okay, but it is not too strong that it won't stop in time. However, if you have a big battery, which I saw somebody was using a 6,000 milliamp battery. Yeah, you want to use a big battery so you can play all day. But when you put in a calculation at and I believe he was using a 16C battery, that calculation is like a 90 something amp that's going through. Now, there are people that argue that, oh, the motor will not use that much power. It will only use the power as needed, which is true. But you also have to consider this is when the motor is actually stopped. When you pull the trigger, this is the time, that millisecond that the system is asking, or the motor is asking to send me more juice, and that is when the motor asks the most power. If you look at a power graph, that the first millisecond, the power will shoot up, and then when you continue holding the trigger, the current will drop because they're already going. The momentum's already going. The motor will continue to stop. But this is not how we play airsoft. In airsoft, we spam semi-auto. So you literally, every time you pull a trigger, the motor starts spinning, starts spinning. That is sending signal like this. It spikes. Okay. So when it spikes, this is when you're sending a whole lot of current into the motor. Now, if you pair with a battery with such a big battery, when you let go of a trigger, sometimes it's going to happen with a 2-round burst. This is why that I always stress that you try a smaller battery. In the past, yeah, we talk about maybe using a 7.4. If you have a weak spring, and if you have a stronger spring, use 11.1. I guess this is probably a lazy way to explain it. Again, if I'm wrong on this, please let me know. But again, I have observed this over the years that usually problem solve itself if you use a smaller battery. Now, the proper solutions for it, I can think of three different kind. Well, maybe there's a fourth one too, but I'll explain that later. So number one, as we talk about the flow of current, right? So you want to use you want to use a smaller battery, so your amp or whatever power going there sent to the motor is a little less. So usually that you can probably get a 2,000 milliamp or maybe a 3,000 milliamp, and with a 16, maybe like a 15C discharge rate, and maybe calculate maybe about 45 amp. Those numbers should be pretty safe. I don't have the exact number when this started to occur. Then again, when you start switching different motor, that whole formula, because the motor itself, the magnet is have resistance itself. So that whole formula may be completely not applicable. Okay, so I can't tell exactly when this happened when you start switching parts. On the other hand, since we're talking about stock Krytac gun, the 30K motor, it does have it has a bonded neodymium magnet in there. It's pretty strong. So it normally you pair with a strong spring, 11.1 battery, even a 20C discharge rate, it will probably stop. It will most likely stop. But when you start pairing a even bigger battery, like a 6,000 milliamp one, the number goes skyrocket. I can't guarantee this is can stop the motor. Okay, so that's one solution. Use a smaller battery. The other solution, obviously, is to increase the resistance of the gearbox or on the motor. One way of doing it is to install a bigger spring. So again, this happened a lot more often on a gun that's sent to maybe a UK regions because they require a smaller spring, a weaker spring. You have to shoot maybe like 350. That is when this happened, you can swap out the spring and put in a 120 in there, and that usually will stop it from occurring again. There's a lot of debate about like, can I use a bigger spring in UK or not? But that is up to you guys to decide. That I can't tell you because what I've been told by our distributor, that they want us to ship the gun with a weaker spring, which is about 110, maybe sometimes 100. In Japan is definitely a weak spring. The spring is like 85 to 90 M90. So yeah, you absolutely cannot use 11.1 on those specification for Japan and Italy because they are under 1 joule. In terms of US, Canada, yeah, not a problem. You can use 11.1 volt battery. That usually works fine because again, the calculation is, you know, a capacity which is roughly about 2,000 milliamp, maybe up to 3,000 milliamps, and the discharge rate about 15, maybe 20. So again, this is something that you guys need to experiment. I can't tell you. There's so many different kind of configuration right there. What I like to do in the future is maybe work with more different battery manufacturer like Titan Power, and we come up with certain standard to say, hey, this is what we want you guys to use. But again, generally, I do recommend using those their battery because we tested it, works fine. But not the 6,000 version. Okay, 6,000 is way too much. Okay, third option. The third option is installing an ECU, which is electronic control unit. Um, I'm kind of indifferent because I know nowadays that people like to add electronics into the gun is uh, you can control all aspects how the motor works, and because with ECU you can actually program or adjust the power sending to the gun, and there's also a feature called active braking. Basically, it's sending a negative current into the motor to reverse the motor. But the problem with active braking is um, it creates heat because you're sending current backward, and when you're spamming semi, you are spinning stop, and it generates heat so fast. And heat and magnets don't match. They don't like each other. You will wear out the motor really fast. Now, the that said, the modern ECU does allow you to control or adjust how much power reverse, how much active braking is sent. You don't want to send 100%. You want to send maybe about 20% or less. That just might work. So the downside of using ECU, of course, you got to be somebody who have a bit of know-how and how to install it, how to fit it together, how to do the programming. It's not for new players. If you're a new player, you heard people telling you to install ECU. I would advise you to talk to somebody who have done this before, who have experience doing this, or contact a shop that installed this for you. Otherwise, it's just creating a bunch of headache for you. So far, three options: use a smaller battery, install a bigger spring, and install ECU. And then there's a fourth option. Fourth option is to replace the motor. Replace the motor with maybe a brushless motor. The brushless motor is somewhat new to the airsoft, airsoft industry. Okay, brushless motor is not new, but applying into airsoft is new. Brushless motor is completely different than a traditional motor. There are controlled by signaling, and you can actually make the motor stop on a dime. It does not need to have, it doesn't, the momentum doesn't apply to a brushless motor. But the downside of brushless motor is they're very expensive. They're anything between 150 bucks to all the way to 200 some dollars. Uh, Not many people really want to spend that kind of money on a brand new gun. So, you have to make that decision yourself. I can't tell you. Okay. But this is, again, there are some couple options you can do. So anyway, that's pretty much what I want to talk about the overspin. Everybody's talking about it lately. Again, if you have any questions, comment down below, and if anything that I said wrong, let me know. I'll correct it. Yeah, that's it. So okay, I'll see you next time. Be nice and be kind. Later.